Welcome back to the Chua podcast. I'm your host, David Ju, and I'm here with Master Ju.
How's it going there, Mr. Ju?
It's going okay. Anyways, all right, this week, a lot of these questions are just things just coming up in class here. Differences between slipping, sliding, stepping, shifting. Last week or a couple weeks ago, we talked about the rotation of the hand. I guess it's kind of similar.
Okay.
But now we're looking at the footwork, right? We got different variations. So can you go through those four, and if there's any more extra? Well, let's start with stepping. What do we have?
Yeah, well, I know, I was thinking about that. It's like, well, which one should we talk about first? Well, I think you're right. Stepping will be real basic. It's moving the one foot to the next, stepping forward, stepping backwards, right? Mm-hmm. And when you do the stepping, you perform this technique, what we call in-out stepping. A good example would be walking stance because it's pretty wide. Mm-hmm. And as you move forward, you bring the foot in about half the distance of the stance. I always say half the distance of the stance. Mm-hmm. And it goes back out. And this creates a sine wave. And so that's important when we do that. And it's natural. I mean, you could step just straight line. Mm-hmm. And some martial arts actually do that. And you don't have this sine wave because the foot is just moving forward. It's very robotic in that way.
Right.
Or maybe it's more like beauty pageants where the contestants would put a book on their head and they didn't want to make the head go up and down. They walked very straight.
Okay.
So that's stepping, right? So it's this in-out stepping. And then you also have what we call slipping. Well, slipping is you're not actually moving forward per se, like covering a lot of ground. Mm-hmm. You're moving from one stance to another. So for instance, I might be in a walking stance and I gotta slip my foot into an L stance. So there's a couple different ways to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say I'm in a left walking stance. I'm gonna bring my feet in about half the distance of the stance, and then I move it back into the L stance. Mm-hmm. And so then you have that in-out stepping. So again, it creates that sine wave, and that's how we create power. Sometimes we don't do that. You basically slip. And so you don't have that in-out stepping. It's usually created when you don't need power. So in-out stepping is usually to create power.
Right.
But when I slip one foot, let's say I'm in an L stance and I slip the foot into the left walking stance. So I don't bring my feet in and then out. I just move my front foot or back foot into the next position.
Okay.
Right.
And what pattern would that show up in?
Jungun, where let's say you did that high back foot strike and you do this release.
Okay.
And then you slip that front foot into the...
Right. Okay.
So in that case, you just move it forward. Right? Mm-hmm. Because you don't need power. You don't actually bring that foot back and try to pull him in.
Right.
You just move forward.
Yeah.
But there are some slight slipping, a slight in-out stepping, like in, which one? Chungmu.
Or Taege, with low knife hand and then to the walking stance, circular block. Still slightly, are you saying even less?
Yeah.
Okay, how about the grab?
Right, I was going to get to that.
Okay. Well, you said Chungmu, so yeah.
So like in Chungmu, you do this low side block, and then you move it in an L stance, and then you move into the walking stance and you grab the head.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at Jungun, the left foot would just move into the walking stance, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, there's a slight backward motion. It's kind of like a recovery of balance. I blocked. Mm-hmm. I recover my balance because I got to square off my body, and then I move forward to grab the head.
Yeah, okay.
And so there's a slight in-out step, and when I say slight, it's not a lot, not like half the distance, like I was going to punch somebody.
Yeah.
Right, so but that's still slipping, and there is, again, this slight, very minimal in-out movement of the footwork.
Okay. All right.
That's slipping.
So now sliding.
So sliding is kind of like stepping, except you're covering ground, and usually it's like the back foot, or it could be the front foot, is moving past the other one.
Yeah.
And so let's say I'm in a right L stance and I slide into a right L stance, like in Warong, right? Actually, that's a walking stance, and you slide into right L stance and you do a side elbow thrust. So you're covering ground. One foot would move, the other one would follow.
So how much are we usually sliding on that?
I think that mostly when we're doing these sliding techniques, you can't cover a lot of ground.
Yeah,
right. 1.5 shoulder width.
Okay.
Is probably the distance from that stance to the next stance is probably about 1.5 shoulder width.
Okay.
Is what I would say.
Yeah. And then the last one we got is shifting.
Shifting. Both feet stays in the same position, and you actually move forward or backwards, and it's only about 1 inch or 2 points, whatever that is in centimeters. And so the feet or the stance stays in the same position, and you've got to move together. So it's not a lot of distance. So you don't wind it up like in sliding. You kind of what you're actually doing is kind of lining
stepping.
it.
Well, you're doing it in-out stepping. You pull it back, and then you throw it forward.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the shifting is actually the feet is just slips back. Both of them slips back or forward.
Right.
And maintains that position. So it's not like you can push off on one foot more than the other. Sliding, you actually kind of push off of one leg versus the other.
Yeah.
This one, you have to move both at the same time. And so it's very minimal. So there are some interesting techniques. Like in Wadrong, you go from the walking stance and you slip into the right L stance. And you punch, right?
No,
let's say low side block, and then you slip the front foot into the right L stance and you punch. Is there in-out stepping? In that case, there is not, right? Remember, I said in-out stepping is to help create power. But in this case, you're very close to the opponent, and so he's coming towards you, and you just slip that front foot back and you execute the punch. So there is no, it's very quick. So we don't have time to go in and then out.
Right.
Right? And so that's a time when you don't do that, and you're executing a technique that does kind of require power, but you don't have the same kind of power as if you were able to wind it up.
Right.
Well,
that also depends on the application too, right? You knock him and then you punch him.
Right. But it's interesting because when we talk about that Jungun, where you're doing that high double forearm block and then you execute a punch. You're in a left walking stance, and that's a high double forearm block. You're blocking with the left arm, and you slip the front foot into a right L stance and you punch with the left hand. And so when I talked about Wadrong, it makes a lot of sense. He's coming in. I just slip that foot, but I'm punching with the rear hand.
Right.
I actually have quite a bit of power there.
Yeah.
Not a lot of power, but I still have power there.
Yeah.
Where in Jungun, it's not the same. I'm blocking with that left hand. I have to slip back. I have to wind this hand back to execute that punch. Otherwise, it would be block and then punch.
Yeah.
It would be just my arm is bent, and then it's got to go straight into the punch.
Yeah.
So which one is correct? I teach it where you go in and out.
Yeah.
Because as I move back, then I can pull my hand back. Not a lot, but it's still coming back. I'm doing this in, and then I go back out and punch with that same hand. It might be different if I was in a high double forearm block, slip back, and I punch with the right hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just slide back.
All right, another exciting topip on shifting, sliding, stepping, and...
You look excited.
No, I'm just kidding.
That sounded exciting.
Exciting. Super exciting. Anyways, no, I think it's all a good topic. I'm just joking around here.
Sure.
It's all acting. Anyways, as always, don't forget to be safe.
Keep training.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Taekwon.